Good morning, everybody. It is Cowboy, aka Nick. We've got Veles here, everybody's favorite show, or at least a lot of people's favorite show, from what I keep hearing from the audience. Veles brings it, is absolute animal, the dark raven of the deep state. And if you are going to do the same thing as me, you're going to have your dark roast ready to go, your pencil sharpened, your notebook out. The only thing I have over you is that I get to actually ask my questions at the end of the show, which is one of the greatest things I get to do here. Didn't get to do that last week. I had to leave unexpectedly. I had a lot of good stuff prepped. That said, first, we want to go ahead and take a look in the description. We got a couple of goodies for you. We have our paid sponsor, Algo Factory, got an algo in there that I built for you. You see me turn it into code, and you see how it's done. And I show you the tools that people use to plug it into their broker so it can trade with or not at the computer. It does need to be optimized before you trade it. So understand it's not plug and play, but it's awesome. And then on top of that, as oh my goodness, as Veles would normally say, please also take a look at our other sponsors. We got Gus Demas over at perpetualassets.com. We got Ian Burlingame with his work over at his Substack, which is Ian Burlingame at substack.com, I believe. Any sponsor or any guests or anybody else I left out there, Veles? Ben Kelleran.
I was going to say, yeah, Mr. Kelleran.
Yeah, that's and by the way, Ben's work, you guys, not to be underestimated. The guy is amazing, especially on a macro scale. When it comes to trading, we never get it right all the time. In fact, the way that I trade, I get it right. Yeah, it depends on the algo, maybe 65 to 75% of the time, and that's all you got to do. So understand that that's what he does for a living, guys. Ben Kelleran is an investor for a living. He pays his bills doing it. Definitely go check out his Substack, which is Contrarian Corner with 2 Ks. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Veles. Again, always a pleasure. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, my friend, and I thank you for the introduction. And yes, folks, remember on the YouTube page where it'll say so many people are watching, or when did it start, or how many folks have watched it, click the little button that says, or little word says more, and you'll get the details that Algo was talking about.
Yeah, as far as how to find people's stuff, right?
Yeah. So, yes, and other than his very timely and accurate reminders about both his program and Gus, as usual, if any of you need access to the Discord page or just want to reach out, ask questions about the show or similar, you can reach me at the following email address, 1917VELES@gmail.com. Again, 1917VELES@gmail.com. I've heard from a number of you whether to ask for access to Discord or similar, and I've had some good conversations with some folks, so there's that. With that, I'll move into our content, and Mr. Gorilla will be joining us shortly. Harvard. That university is investigating who were the students who filmed Larry Summers' statement to students in class about his relationship with Jeff Epstein. Harvard says it's a disciplinary matter because the students may not have been in that may not have been actually one of their classes. They recorded it without permission and they posted it publicly. Don't you dare endanger contributions to our endowment, you worms. Let's go dancing. There's a rumor that the new ballroom at the White House is a cover for what's underneath. Some folks say data center, other folks say continuity of government center. Sticking a data center in the bottom of the White House seems like a lot, but sticking a continuity of government center would make more sense. I wonder if it connects to the Denver airport. Private equity. There are rumblings in the private equity and venture capital world at the moment. Yes, per prior programs, I've conveyed that they're hopeful about 2026 versus the disappointments that were 2025, mostly due to, officially, they blame tariffs. Money does continue to flow into all things healthcare, especially the precision healthcare space, which I mentioned on my last program. Official story is the projected activity in 2025 did not materialize. And by Q3 of 2025, with lower interest rates and tariff situation mellowing, there was optimism returning in Q3. Analysts continue to believe Europe will be a place of a lot of activity in 2026, though I would remind you, in my worldview, that's due to the weakness in those economies, making them targets more than healthy economic activity. There's also continued ink in analysts' reports about private equity and venture capital interest in anyone building equipment or resources used in data centers or power grid enhancement. There are threads of truth out there if you know where to find them. One of which is certain analysts mentioning one of those terms who outside of certain circles you never hear. By the way, we will visit the theme of words a little later today. In this case, in the private equity space, a phrase many of you may not be familiar with, or a term, is what's known as DPI, Delta Papa Indigo, or distributions paid in capital. So what is that? It's a key performance metric used primarily in private equity and venture capital investing. DPI measures the ratio of cumulative cash distributions that investors have received from a fund relative to the total capital they've invested. If your DPI is 1, it means you received back exactly what you invested, or said another way, you broke even. A DPI greater than 1 means you made money. For instance, a DPI of 2.3 means you made $2.30 for every dollar you invested. If your number is less than 1, you're still waiting to receive your investment. Why it matters is DPI represents actual realized profits that have been distributed back to investors, showing real profits earned to date rather than theoretical or unrealized gains. This makes it particularly valuable because it measures actual cash in hand, not just paper gains. So why am I going into all these details about DPI? Because for people in that world, regardless of analyst statements and positive news from PE firms, certain parties are asking what the individual and collective DPI numbers are. To paraphrase Tom Cruise, show me the money. Said more bluntly, they don't believe the numbers on these deals till they see the audited DPI figures. My opinion is these investors are not going to want to provide the real figures, not the least of which is because these deals may not be that healthy. It is because many of these deals and portfolios, there's a darker strategy planned for mid to late 2026 that I think no one wants to talk about. We'll get into that a little later today. Observations by Polly St. George. Polly offered 2 important observations about the shootings in Australia. First, how many shootings like this have occurred where we have coverage of camera angles, both of those being shot at as well as the vantage point of the shooter? Second, for you fans of the occult, why did one of the shooters specifically stop in the middle between 2 large light poles on a bridge and then very dramatically open fire? From a certain perspective or angle, one could say 2 pillars or towers. For those of you familiar with the occult, you'll understand the significance. Your health and profiting off the average person. Polly St. George has spoken often, and I thank her yet again, about the wellness company and who's involved with that outfit. Right when many Americans want access to ivermectin, those who live outside Tennessee, that is, because you can get it there just by filling out a form. The wellness company is one of the few outfits who can sell it to you. So what's the 411? Harvey Reish of the wellness company and Yale epidemiologist was appointed by the White House to chair the president's cancer panel this week. This is a bit of a mixed bag, as he said frequently he thinks there's a connection between coof shots and turbo cancers. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, but I welcome the discussion. But Veles, why is that a problem? Because it feels strongly Hegelian. If you tried to research options beyond inoculations during the coof, in an extreme case, Australia wanted to put you in a camp. Now we have a quote-unquote brave people saying, hey, I think there's a connection between those shots and serious health issues. Equally, we know ivermectin is an amazing drug because it was praised by none other than the United Nations, who described it as one of the greatest developments since penicillin. So the rumors may be true. You can use ivermectin for a lot of things. Now they want to make it more available. Okay, but they're profiting from making it more available. Ergo, we're being scammed again, even if the scam, in this case, works or is to your benefit. They didn't make it available during the health crisis and tried to prevent people from getting it. Now people have side effects and hope it may alleviate those side effects or prevent new illnesses. That's a market creation. That's not healthcare. 2 seconds, folks. Soccer news in Europe is mafia. Just in time prior to the Soccer World Cup, which will get into full force in 2026, the English Soccer Club, or for you Europeans, football club, there was a £2.5 billion sale of the well-known team in England known as Chelsea by Roman Abramovich. However, that money was frozen because he, unfortunately, is ethnically Russian. Not to worry, no joke, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, is giving the £2.5 billion to the government of Ukraine. I'm not kidding. President Zelensky, while snorting cocaine, wishes to thank the British for the money, and he will store it in a wall safe in Tel Aviv, where his family has a residence. The latter part is no joke about the residence in Tel Aviv. Forthcoming movie. There's a PSYOP coming, folks, and we need to be aware of the PSYOP. It's going to build over time until the PSYOP arrives in movie theaters. I'm speaking of Steven Spielberg's forthcoming movie, Disclosure Day. That's not a crack on Spielberg's work. The topic of disclosure within the UFO community and a laundry list of other things. If we examine the 1977 movie Close Encounters, who I love, by the way, it's loaded with references to a ton of things. Different types of UFO craft types that had been reported by observers prior to the movie coming out, side effects described by UFO contactees, a cameo by J. Allen Hynek, an homage to Jacques Vallée, the well-known French researcher on the topic, a removed scene in the movie that you can find on YouTube that references Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and some subtle defense contractor references by name, among other things. Then we have the famous statement supposedly attributed to Ronald Reagan, who during a private viewing at the White House with Spielberg looked at him and said, and supposedly this was the quote, "There are a number of people in this room who know that everything on that screen is absolutely true," unquote. Spielberg in recent years has confirmed that's what Reagan said. The problem is we don't have that on tape or film, and we know Hollywood has been on the intelligence community's payroll since the beginning. Then we had the movie Super 8, heavily inspired by Spielberg's earlier work, including the fact that the lighting and the way in which the film looks on the screen was intended to replicate how films looked in the 70s due to the physical Kodak film they used at that time. Super 8 also following this type of subject matter. Will we most likely be experiencing a major economic correction soon? Well, I'm going to get into that a little later. Have we had nothing but crap in theaters for years? Yes. Have I covered this on a couple of programs? Yes. Tom Cruise's sequel to Top Gun was incredibly popular and profitable, no doubt further made possible by the lack of any good movies at the same time, a hunger for good movies, and it was pro-American to the audience, to an audience who's tired of being told they suck. Because of my employers, my takeaway about the film was you have a popular mechanism where lots of society desire to view the film. Ergo, if you have a subliminal or similar message in the film, immense reach with a film like the second Top Gun. So what happens when those same conditions of no decent films are available with a public who might be agitated due to poor economic and global conditions and want to get away from it all? This is a very real consideration because you see films during the 1929 Depression and the years that followed. Filmmaking allowed people to escape their pain, and yes, even hunger, and I'm not kidding about that, in a movie theater. So what happens when the film is essentially Close Encounters 2, who appears to leverage several theme-based films on this topic who preceded it? Will there be subliminal messaging in the film? Will there be social conditioning in the film? You may want to watch that film with polarized glasses, folks. God only knows what it may contain, but Spielberg is coming out of retirement essentially to release it. On a related note, the second film in the Accountant film series had a storyline where a guy selling pizzas is supporting the trafficking of kids.
Wow.
Yes. Lastly, we have a very white and blue colored animated film about King David that's coming out. You know, after a while, you don't even see the Matrix code anymore. You just see tree, dog, building. See you at the movies.
Hey, do you guys know what Ian Carroll used to do before he became a conspiracy theorist?
No, pizza delivery boy.
Yeah.
Wow. V, shortly before you joined us, I covered that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, the Chelsea soccer/football club was sold by Roman Abramovich, but they wouldn't let him keep the money because he's Russian.
You got to be kidding me.
Well, wait. Keir Starmer announced this week in Parliament that they're giving the £2.5 billion to the government of Ukraine.
Wow.
Zelensky's cocaine habit says thank you.
Oh my God. Like, who wants to do business with these people? It's incredible. The standard that these assholes are putting out there it's incredible. These people are nuts. They're nuts.
I keep joking with my brother about the scene from the original Batman that came out in 1989 where Knox, the reporter, is talking to the police on the phone and he's asking them what happened to Jack Napier, you know, who becomes the Joker.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson. He goes, what happened to Napier? because he was there and he saw, what do you call it, him fall into the vat of chemicals. And he incredulously holds the phone away from his face and goes, "Suicide. Wait a minute. Let me get my recorder." And then they hang up on him. That disgusts me. Two things in the last 10 years who disgust me at a biblical level. I know many of you will say about the following, "Well, Veles, what do you expect?" I expect them to say nothing. That's what I expect, even if it is going on. The first item was during the COOF crisis was passing the financial press kept moaning about how Pfizer and Moderna, how are they possibly going to maintain these revenue numbers without another major disease? Then yelled at those same pharma firms, who I have no respect for either, demanding to know, well, what are you going to do about our money? The other being this week's business media announcement of, and I quote, "worrying stock price drops in the U.S. defense contractors because the Ukraine war might end." Then a day later, to calm jittery defense investors, those stocks rose a little because Germany's investing $60 billion in defense spending. I hope all involved are thrust at the appropriate time into the deepest depths of Gehenna. Rhode Island and Brown University. I'm not going to go too deep into that tragic event at that school last week. However, I do have a number of points. Number one, not a good look, Rhode Island. Of course, Gavin Newsom is more likely to clean up a bad public image than Rhode Island. I mean, seriously, folks, what sort of leverage is there against Rhode Island? There's no mechanism to hold anybody accountable. They disbarred Hunter Biden this week in Delaware, finally. I didn't even know you had a law license.
I didn't even know you had a law degree.
It's a Pyrrhic victory, but even Delaware can get off its backside to protect that state's graft with business registrations for those of you who are familiar. Not to mention the fact the Biden family, and I mean the family, runs Delaware. I mean, it's mafia up there. Rhode Island.
Trust the Delaware Depository, Veles. They're a great place to put your gold.
Oh, nice.
Axe the Comex.
I hear they're good at getting rid of cars that have a thump in the trunk. Rhode Island, though, can just continue to look like a Libyan slave market with a shrug, no matter how bad it goes. Some of you may have seen the disclosures at the school now about blind spots and campus camera coverage. That's not all, though. Here's a couple of amazing items, including the head of campus security was let go from their last job for not having proper credentials. The cameras may have been removed or turned off because the school president was bullied by activists. The city of Providence chief of staff has about every pronoun you can imagine, and the Providence police chief has a nephew who ran a huge fentanyl ring on the East Coast. With a team like that, this is the perfect place to carry out this kind of an attack. By the way, for those who may have seen the videos of a guy named Lyle Culpepper, a Providence assemblyman, I just want to remind you that guy is literally a comedian. That's not real. That's clickbait. Second bad look is the FBI yet again, for those of you who saw the video of the FBI agents kicking over the snow of a crime scene on the campus. They claim they were looking for evidence. That's not how it's done, folks. You develop a grid pattern, you sweep the area with metal detectors, and then you work with a rake-like device to pick up any debris that's under the snow. Third item, there's a glimmer of airstrikes available. If Benjamin Erickson, the guy Rhode Island and Brown wrongly and publicly said was the shooter, is not building a powerful legal team, he's in error. Ben, you won the lottery, brother. Sue the state and the university for every dime they have and collect your lottery ticket. Appear on every media channel and alternative news provider and YouTube once your legal team's in place. Bring the pain, man. Patrick Ryan. And by the way, folks, I was chatting just this morning with V and Algo about something that's not in my content, but I'll reference it at the end of this segment about Patrick. Some sound bites from him, and you may need to investigate some of these more fully on your own. First, how many of you were aware that 3 former CIA directors, being Michael Morrell, Michael Hayden, and Leon Panetta, who are on the board of directors for the Atlantic Council, then who else were they advisors for? The now deceased Rob Reiner and his media efforts, including a 4th former CIA director. It's also come out around the time of he and his wife's death. They were supposed to have dinner with the Obamas either that night or the following day. You don't just have dinner with the Obamas, even if you're both celebrities. That's a dinner with a reason. So what was the reason or topic to be discussed? And most likely, did it relate to the media firm they had organized in order to attack the current administration? Then we have Reiner's very disturbed son, who easily could have been compromised to kill his parents. Oh, come on, Veles, that's nuts. Really? Let's talk about John Hinckley Jr. and his father and his brother, and who his father and brother worked for before Hinckley tried to kill Ronald Reagan.
Right.
Further, I'll go there. Were the Obamas the real target, and something went wrong? Or, like the death of the Obamas' chef on their property, was this yet another warning to them to not do anything they're not ordered to do by their handlers? We shall see. Patrick Ryan's second item, he posted on Monday the following, and I quote, "This is the last week before irreversible things are committed. Dot your I's and cross your T's," unquote. Third item that he stated the same day, quote, "All the theater kids are deployed. Flags so false, you're better off thinking it's all deep fakes anyways. Israeli consolidation underway. They have to rush the third temple now," unquote. Fourth item. "This is lazy script writing. We deserve better psyops. Ignore the theater," unquote. We at Rogue have been saying that last one for about 5 years now, so we thank Patrick for the love. Fifth item, he pointed out SpaceX has reached $800 billion of market capitalization, and that's larger than the 6 largest defense primes, including L3, Northrop, General Dynamics, Lockheed, Boeing, and RTX. The latter company, RTX, is probably one many of you have never heard of. Patrick's take, and I quote, "Elon is now larger than the deep state," unquote. The last few days, Patrick, with his usual style and brain on loan from God, has confirmed he is being heavily monitored by the Levant intelligence group, Unit 8200. Many would be raising their shields and telling Lieutenant Worf to go full warp with a spread of torpedoes. Not Patrick. He's working on ways to exploit and weaponize their monitoring him because he knows they won't stop. Dear Lord above... Dear Lord above, thank you for letting me live long enough to know of or have met people like Patrick. His last item was a lengthy dissertation about the true nature of the Pilgrims, the Church of England, and England itself. He posted it for Thanksgiving. The opening reads as follows, and I quote, "Today we give thanks to those brave enough to reject the infidel pretenders upon the British throne, a fledgling empire unsure of its path, but confident enough to reject papal encroachment through both Ireland and Cromwell. The Pilgrims are the losers of the English Civil War. British society rejected them and cast them out as servants to frontier labor. The Pilgrims, an inversion of Swiss Protestant work ethic, went into the mysterious continent and found a variety of mankind never seen before, or a variant of mankind never seen before. They became the first step of the grand sociological experiment that would prove that even Stone Age tribals could repel a growing maritime power for centuries. An unconfident footing to those with ambitions of global banking," unquote. It's rather lengthy, so the final lines of what he wrote is as follows. "I used to think God was chaos, because chaos is what truly tests us, throws all expectation into the rubbish bin. But chaos is devoid of intent. It's random, dispassionate. Insanity is chaos with intent. That's a very different interpretation, and it properly describes the tactics of the divine. Our Pilgrim ancestors answered the insane God appropriately. Yes, you are insane because you were insane enough to invent love. And our love of life and each other is so important, we will tolerate entropy, bad weather, failed crops, barbarian violence, disease, war, trade inconsistency, etc. We serve each other and not a king who presumes power from a foggy, cold island. That's the Pilgrim I'm thankful for. Death to Jeffrey Epstein and the pretenders who back him," unquote. Now, as I shared with V and Algo this morning, just this morning, Patrick posted something, and bear with me just a second. Patrick posted something, and even for me, I went to DEF CON 2 because there's no other way for me to say this, folks. I have no idea what he means. The problem is it's Patrick Ryan. It's not like, well, that guy that you told me about is a bit of a crackpot. There are a number of people out there that even if they said absolute insanity, I'm like, yes, but consider the source. Like, we need to kind of understand where they're going with this. What Patrick Ryan posted literally this morning is as follows. If you ever felt like your life never mattered or you're not living up to your potential, you may have spent years tearing apart your own mind to escape. After tomorrow, you will begin to see how much of those thoughts never mattered. After tomorrow, the catastrophe begins. We begin our forced transition into a omni-surveillance pattern reinforced by personalized on-demand confirmation bias. Socialism as a service, for those of you in the IT world that are familiar with software as a service or SaaS, except without the need to balance class, economics, fiscal, domestic, or foreign policy. Everything everyone has ever done will converge and subsume all future convergences tomorrow. They will summon the dead, virtualize ghasts of hyperbolic patriotism that only ensures the advanced societies terminate each other. All you had to do was kill Rousseau in his cradle, and the entire outcome would have been avoided. He's referring to the philosopher Rousseau. Maritime colonial enforcement will never operate faster than the smut-laced perversions of white women wanting to have sex with foreign-born help. We need a Jones Act, but for white women's psychology. It's too late for that now. Epstein was always the transmutation device for the regions I wanted anyways, the blood of the Titans. You can put on your thinking caps or foil and try and figure out what he meant by that. But for me, it relates to his opening comment about dot your I's and cross your T's. Moving right along, motivation. Professor Zhang has content worth sharing recently, and though important, not the least of which are his recent missives about the Levant. By the way, he's one of the folks in the alternative space who's adopted the term Levant for our friends in Tel Aviv. I feel yet again Rogue News is owed royalties because Algo V and I were the ones who originally used that reference. Let me baseline it all the time.
Yep.
Let me baseline and say now more than ever, I believe Zhang to be a controlled presence on YouTube and related. Does that mean I think he's a bad person? No. His content over time shows a definite pattern and progression of revelation. But also at the same time, folks, remember Donut Factory and others, and my brother from another mother, Cool Cat, when it comes to certain folks out there that reveal our apex overlords and their habit of these symbolisms and the things they do, which in certain circles is known as the revelation of the method. It's that philosophical idea, we can hurt you because we told you we were going to hurt you, and you could take steps to prevent us from hurting you, but you went ahead and did that anyway. Zhang's content over time does show this pattern, and that can be good or evil. Right now, his content is worthwhile, even if he's on somebody's payroll. The revelations he's fostering are on par with Matthew Arrett and others, with great succinctness articulating things we at Rogue and others have been conveying about the world we live in for years, especially history. Elite power dynamics, the rise and fall of empires, the financial world, and the list goes on. Recently, Professor Zhang discussed why global elites do not consider themselves evil and why that very word is irrelevant to them. In a purely anthropological or political science sense, he began with this statement. The quote-unquote average person believes in cooperation and teamwork. It's to their benefit both individually and to the group or society at a whole. I myself personally have heard this often on the university campuses where I've been working when I hear students speak to senior university leaders about the need for collaboration, transparency, benefiting the community of voices and similar. I've also heard it parroted for 20 years from human resource departments at commercial firms. It's not to say those ideas are bad, but like many things in life, my friends, execution leaves a lot to be desired. What Professor Zhang puts forward is that evil, or evil actions, are administrated. Said another way, the more bureaucracy you have, the more repression you're going to experience and more evil. That bureaucracy or administration does not exist organically in society. It exists because the elite want it there. What he refers to in many social aspects of our lives of engineered dependence. From soldiers to government bureaucrats to academia to large corporations, the hive mind just does what it's told because the system reinforces it. This also dovetails into what the linguist Noam Chomsky meant when he spoke on the topic of his documentary called Manufacturing Consent. While we're there, yes, I know, Chomsky hung out with Epstein. Said another way, this is the industrialization of control through media. What is it the Russian government has said often the last 10 years, and especially since the Ukraine conflict? Their officials have been repeatedly challenged about why Russia has not taken on the West, especially the United States, in the war of words or ideas, especially in the media. Said another way, why have you not fought back, at least trying to explain your position on the events going on in your part of the world? The response of Russian officials has been consistent for 10 years. The control of the United States and global media, and specifically the control of thought, is very powerful and difficult to overcome, they've said. To conclude Professor Zhang's comments, he discusses the reinforcing nature of global elites' actions. Because they all do things one would call evil, it reinforces that evil behavior. I would suggest we consider the decades of Jeff Epstein's activity against that backdrop. And it further helps us understand why Hollywood producers, major minds in academia, government officials of all ideologies, and others simply kept associating with him beyond the blackmail. This is yet another moment to remind us to listen to the dialogue from the early 1980s movie, My Dinner with Andre. What's it all about? Infrastructure. A footnote of sorts. Another lecture by Zhang offered an assessment of Israel in general and Gaza specifically, who I think better explains comments by Tom Luongo or others. Nothing wrong with Tom. He simply stated it several times that there are forces at play who are going to remove every man, woman, and child from Gaza no matter what you do. Zhang delves into the why. That being, the world is moving away from bipolar or even mid-grade multipolar world. Yes, we've heard these types of comments before. What does Zhang point to, though, as the why? The why to him is the focus globally now is going to be on infrastructure, or what he calls an infrastructure global economic model with implications for financial models and surveillance. My Veles two coins in the pond here of simplification is anyone who is anyone knows when it comes to the Caribbean, Cuba is simply the linchpin of the whole region when it comes to trade and cargo. I would dare say if you truly wanted to overthrow the current Cuban government, you need to put a global elite plan together who demonstrates Cuba being more effective in international trade than they are today. That's how you remove the current government. This is the basis of Zhang's argument around Israel. Again, said loosely, Israel is as critical to the Middle East and the Mediterranean as Cuba is to the Caribbean. He lays out an argument that global governments are not confused at all about what's going on in Gaza. They're playing their traditional roles, either decrying Israel's actions or defending Israeli foreign policy. The world ignores certain Zionist espousing leaders in Israel because their self-interest needs Israel to continue doing what they're doing relative to international trade. Domestic U.S. infrastructure. Taking the infrastructure topic to a U.S.-based focus, TechCrunch magazine recently asked a very appropriate question. Is the record-setting spending on data center builds in the United States tying up personnel and resources who might normally have been used to fix America's aging infrastructure? I would point out that article, typical of Silicon Valley thinking, used it as an opportunity to complain yet again about enforcement of labor laws and foreign nationals in the U.S., aka the quote-unquote current administration's immigration crackdown. From the book of Veles, those are not immigrants. They're exploited labor, whose cheap and powerful interests want that labor. Let us consider that argument for a moment. Are we redirecting critical resources to building data centers and associated supporting assets instead of attention on America's infrastructure problems? Well, of course we are. However, let us remember we've identified down to the last nut and bolt via many consulting firms everything wrong with our power grid. Yes, this is the common topic for me of hardening our grid from failure or impairment due to a variety of causes. The problem, folks, are not valuable resources are being redirected. Articles like this are made public to argue we need to let more labor into the United States. The problem is the same problem it's always been. It's about will or willpower. We didn't have the will as a country to improve ports on the ocean, river cargo traffic, airports, highways, bridges. Powerful interests did have the will to dump billions of dollars on data centers and new power production facilities, including nuclear. Why is that? Because those interests will benefit from it, of course. Until someone makes a salient argument to the elites about our aged bridges, those bridges will continue to creak and strain until they're the top news story of the day. They don't even try. We have so many crisis actors, I have to wonder if rates have gone down. Here's an amusing item. Some clarity on one of them. David Hogg of Parkland shooting fame has had a father named Kevin who was a former FBI agent. There are accusations Kevin was involved in crisis management activity and similar. These are the facts of what I've been able to find on that topic, and another reminder to all of us to do our research. David's father, Kevin, was a former Navy pilot and worked for the FBI at the Los Angeles airport as part of their airport residency or resident agency personnel. At many major U.S. airports, there's a small detachment of FBI agents assigned, especially if they have international arrivals. Kevin Hogg, as part of that work, would have had in scope stopping terrorism, smuggling, and similar. Equally being involved in such operations would mean he was probably trained in crisis management. For the sake of transparency, I've been involved in crisis management simulations and desktop exercises for nearly 10 years. Being involved in training exercises, leveraging crisis planning does not mean you're connected to the deep state. Does this mean Kevin Hogg, David's father, was not involved in FBI PSYOPs work? It means it's highly unlikely and probably a distraction from more important truths. It's also worth noting that Kevin Hogg passed away in 2014. What is true is Stephanie Horowitz, who was also at Parkland, was at the Florida State shooting in April of this year, as was Joshua Gallagher, a FSU law student. Also true is Zoe Weissman attended a school next to Parkland during that shooting and was at Brown University during the shooting last week. Mia Tretta was wounded in the 2019 Saucus High School shooting in Los Angeles and was also at Brown University during that incident. Mia's parents are Sean Tretta and Tiffany Shepis Tretta. Sean is a writer, producer, and director for shows like Mayans, MC, and 12 Monkeys. You recall the storyline of 12 Monkeys. Words matter. You could only whisper at Maximus, otherwise it would disappear. Writers and professors who as far back as the 1950s have lost their lives delving into hidden aspects of global history. The same is true to a degree with hidden ancient history as well. About 5 years ago, Matthew Ehret was one of the first people who, via alternative media, gave the names and timelines of the Lennon Corporation, Davos, and several other apex elites. As I speak to you today, many commentators openly use words like Bank of England, it's essentially the Lennon Corporation by name, the Swiss, and related. On several programs by media personalities, I've caught them using the term Levant for Tel Aviv rather than the word. As I said earlier, I take that personally. You owe us money. Let us not discount how important a moment in history we've witnessed. Calling out powerful publicly through history has had dire consequences. In fact, we're seeing it in our lifetimes. And they can mean the power has faulted, a new model is about to be implemented, or any number of outcomes. In my own personal life, I would point out the press conference with John F. Kennedy shortly before he died. His health condition was worsening. He had Addison's, though the public had no idea, and the drugs were not working as well as they once did. The press was pressuring JFK during a televised conference about the state of the U.S. dollar. The media, either because they didn't understand or they did but weren't going to admit it, acted like the United States was all powerful when it came to international finance. JFK angrily responded, and I quote, "Ask the gnomes of Switzerland why the dollar's in the state it's in," or words to that effect. Outside of certain circles, those words, gnomes of Switzerland, were completely unknown. My mom heard the phone ring and knew it was an old friend from Chicago. The woman on the other end, as soon as my mom said hello, responded with, "Well, now they're going to have to kill him." Metals. Along with today's overall narratives about the economy and where things are headed, we have yet another important data point. This week, the country of Chile elected a man president named Jose Antonio Cast, a man who has Nazi ties in his family and has been endorsed by Israel. Let me say that again, as I'm not joking. He has ties to German Nazis and was endorsed by Israel. It's all the rich man's game, folks. Anywho,
you can't make this up, folks.
Anywho, he's president now. For the last few years, I've been pointing out quite a few governments in South America turned to the left in their more critical elections, including president. South American politics being what they are, these elections in and of themselves are not necessarily a big deal. That is until you consider the history of a country like Chile, who in 1973 not only killed their left-wing president Allende, but then put the military in charge and went even more to the right than they already were. So when a country like that's allowed, key word, allowed to go left in electing a president, I smell a rat. The last few years, I've said Peru, Bolivia, and Chile, among others, went to the political left, likely due to commodities, specifically among them copper, as they are large copper producers. I've shared with you in prior programs there's a strong argument to be made a lot of copper was in storage or on hold prior to those elections. Following the elections, the new governments used the old South American classic, "We're going to spend the money from our natural resources on the poor and infrastructure." I can assure you that rarely occurs down there, even though Chile is a nice country with a good economy. No, what occurred was copper prices soared because supply was cut. Then the folks hoarding the copper made a killing. What we've discussed on recent rogue programs regarding data centers and the power grid is that aluminum is also becoming increasingly critical with those builds along with copper. Chile and Peru account for 35% of global copper production. While trade and tariff negotiations continue with the U.S. and Chile, the topic that was a central focus in the negotiations last summer was copper at Chile's request. But wait, there's more. This week, Glencore, one of the world's largest privately diversified natural resources companies, who's based in Switzerland, by the way, is making major moves in Peru's copper industry. This after Glencore's focus the previous years was on developing their Chilean holdings. I wonder how long it'll be before Peru's government moves back to the right wing to facilitate more metals activity there. At the same time, do not believe for one moment the political events in Chile are unrelated to what occurred in Bulgaria recently. Veles, what occurred in Bulgaria recently? The government was overthrown in the last 2 weeks due to, say it with me, popular public street protests. Where have we seen that movie before? For those of you playing the home game, that's Chile and Bulgaria in the same week. Of course, the reasons for Bulgaria are different than Chile, even if the people doing it are the same. The same week, when a continued middle finger to the world's elites was moves by the country of Hungary. Recall what I said about Hungary prior to and following my time in that country a few months ago. Hungary, shortly after the fall of Bulgaria, passed a resolution blocking any NGOs, non-governmental organizations, from the country who've even heard of George Soros, much less work with him. Again, that means Lord Malik Brown and the London Corporation. Pray for Hungary, my friends. I'm quite serious. Pray for Hungary and its leadership. If I was any form of leader in Hungary, I would be getting very close to the Saudis right now. And if you listen to our programs, you know why I'm saying that. So, the next 10 months. And I don't even know where to start with this. I certainly look forward to Algo and V's input. I've developed an assessment, folks, I'm going to share with you today. I also have other content that follows it on what the next 10 months could look like. And of course, the problem whenever you make a prediction is you got everybody and their brother going, you were wrong. Key word, this is what could be. And it's a work in progress, and it's a baseline, and it's a forming hypothesis. It's not even at the level of baked hypothesis, much less theory. Also, some of you are probably familiar with what is known as the Benner cycle, B-E-N-N-E-R cycle chart, who's based on the Fibonacci sequence. It's been floating around a lot suddenly on X and similar, and certainly by design. Here's the thing. I've seen several versions of that chart who are laid out differently. There it is on your screen now. Dare I say sometimes they've been adjusted by people to fit current time. Does this mean the chart is wrong? But it's like astrology. You have to have the correct chart to map out economic cycles. So here's the model. Overall, we will see a large global economic correction, if not depression, by the fall of 2026, most likely in October.
Yep.
Certainly no later than 2027. There is historical precedent for time spent by elites preparing before that event occurs to benefit from it, and that's not just monetary. It's important to note that many analysts have quietly said we've been in a recession for more than 6 months already. There are historical, astrological, and other reasons why the world's elites, especially apex elites, needed to occur at that time, including positioning themselves. U.S.-related takeaways. There are several economic sectors or behaviors reinforcing this assessment. The IT sector. The U.S. government now has a financial stake in several high-profile IT firms, including artificial intelligence specifically. This means the U.S. government is a stakeholder in those companies. Very rarely have we ever had that, short of the government investing in Chrysler back in the late 1970s to pull them out of the problems they were in. The U.S. government wants a singular AI authority at the federal level rather than states determining their own policies. I would note this is odd, as the administration historically has been an advocate of states' rights. Multiple firms, including media outfits like Disney, are communicating massive investments in AI. Should there be a crisis, they will all scream they cannot operate without those technologies. Nuclear power. We've covered this one extensively. Multiple firms have confirmed they're ready to implement everything from prototype small modular reactors and traditionally large reactors. These prototypes in many cases have already been tested in the lab, and the desire is to incorporate them into the existing U.S. power grid. And I certainly tip my hat to Knight on Discord, who has done a Herculean job in identifying legislation about the nuclear power industry, who's been fast-tracked at both the state, federal level, who's investing where, what plants are being built where, etc. Data centers. Data center expansions and build-outs continue at a brisk pace. The actual and proposed consumption of water by data centers has been immense. The conundrum with this is that data centers should be what's called a closed system, not an open system in their use of water. The water is continuously circulating in the system and cooled via radiator-like equipment, this rather than drawing water into the facility and then sending back it into the aquifer system or a river or what have you. So why all the proposed water usage? As from an engineering and execution level, it should be a closed system. Potentially like Nestle could be a move to legally secure clean U.S. water sources rather than they're actually needed for those facilities. Social and economic patterns. Praise for certain economic leaders or quote-unquote bold thinkers who've created new markets is in vogue again. It's a repeat of the hero worship of executives in telecommunications, energy trading a la Enron, and similar right before the 2001 correction. Same with banks and insurance firms right before 2008. It's an old model, and we've seen it before. Too big to fail is being conditioned into people's minds again, just like the banks prior to 2008. This time it's AI firms, AI-related hardware manufacturers, data centers, the power grid, and so on. Media celebrities are running out of money from various backers, whether left-wing, usually manifested in major media organizations like CNN or MSNBC, and right-wing podcasters and similar. They're all now turning on one another, trying to stay relevant given there's less money to pay everyone. This begs the question, why is this happening? Why the removal of funding to those media actors and assets? My gut says it's in part because the apex elites know where things are headed and they don't need as many media figures as they once did. Said another way, the conflict among media figures fighting over the scraps is a symptom of the bigger picture. Infrastructure builds. Overall, there's no real plan behind these build-outs across AI, power infrastructure, data centers, and several interconnected pieces, including metals production for things like copper and aluminum. In project management, there's a term called crashing the schedule. What does that mean? It means your project is falling behind in meeting key dates or milestones, that or the end or completion date of your project. If the money is there or more money is provided, you have authorization, you can do what's called crashing the schedule. That being, you let folks work overtime, you add more personnel to the project, you pay for more experienced and expensive personnel who take less time to get things done. You can exceed costs allowed for resources you need, and you can pay a premium or similar to expedite things. Of a fashion, it means price is no object, meet your scope requirements, and achieve your required dates no matter what. By the way, Indian contractors love crashing schedules because they always argue their labor's so cheap it's not a big deal anyway. My rebuttal to that is put the right people on the project when it started. Anyway, I'm not advocating Soviet central planning behind these build-outs or infrastructure, nor am I entirely okay with let the free market work it out. We have plans to harden our power grid, and we have existing federal mandates about how all this work should be done properly. My challenge from open sources and speaking to people in those industries is we're not hardening anything according to proposed plans, and fast-tracking builds are in many cases skipping steps who should be taken. We're crashing the schedule just to build for the sake of building. This also leads me to the belief this activity is to eventually transfer wealth with little risk to elite financial interests and eventual government protections for them. Potential outcomes during correction. Bailout again. This means likely there would be a U.S. government bailout of AI firms, data center owners, power grid operators, etc. Funded how? Funded through some combination of traditional money and financial instrument funding and potentially some kind of crypto CBDC currency, made legitimate because of the crisis. The write-off of U.S. debt. There may be an attempt to write off large portions of the debt of the U.S. during all of this by leveraging crypto, aka CBDC mechanisms. To quote the rap artist LL Cool J, don't call it a comeback. And in this case, don't call it a write-off. But it would be a write-off. The other thing, too, about the debt topic, which we've raised here a couple of times, folks, is it's not hyperbole, and no, it's no joke. We're spending $1 trillion a year just on the interest on the debt of the United States. Our military budget officially is $850 billion a year. We're spending more on interest than we spend on the military. Risk. There are vast risks in the entire scenario I just outlined. At a macro level is something Mike Moore recently delved into. As usual with Mike, he nailed the topic, and no one else out there has brought this up to my knowledge. That's a word I used to hear a lot in South America in the 80s and the 90s, being austerity, specifically government austerity. If the U.S. government plans around this scenario go sideways, it may require austerity moves by the U.S. government. Say what you will about U.S. government spending, but shutting off that kind of spending, you're going to feel it. My belief is we may have the root cause now for why so many agencies were cutting staff and spending earlier this year rather than later. Mike Moore believes the government shutdown earlier this year and potentially future ones would be used as a method to try and reduce federal spending, to either delay the eventual outcome or try and avoid austerity entirely. Private equity, venture capital, major financial firms. This one's a biggie, folks. Stay with me. Noting what I said earlier today and what I'm about to say is a generalization. There are an immense number of steps and moves involved in what is a rather simplistic statement. So here goes. Similarly to merger and acquisition activity, or M&A, who led to the events of the 1988 assets owned by banks, private equity, and venture capital, can always be used as collateral for loans and lines of credit. We've already seen this activity recently, just like prior to the economic correction of 1988, which I lived through. Should the assets go bankrupt, loosely said, the funds held by the banks, private equity and related, would only need to be paid back on pennies to the dollar, if at all. I saw this personally with the assets of MCI WorldCom, formerly known as MCI, when its CEO, Bernie Evers, and senior executives went to prison. The company went bankrupt, and the U.S. government cut a deal to enable Verizon to take over MCI WorldCom's assets. In that case, the government had to, because a lot of government communications ran on those networks, not the least of which was the Department of Defense. And I worked there. I know exactly whose networks were, or data was on our networks. They needed someone to run them, so Verizon assumed control. We also saw this with the government bailout of the banks and various investment firms in 2008 who needed huge tranches of money to stay solvent. They've done this before, and it's not like the SEC is going to investigate any of this. Keep in mind, it's a reuse of the argument too big to fail, along with the language around key assets of the United States, including infrastructure. Again, note what I said earlier today about infrastructure and its role, as well as the justification in all of this. My hypothesis is they will force the public to accept this once again on the grounds we cannot let all this infrastructure fail, whether AI, data centers, or power grids. Equally, recall what I said about private equity activity. The biggest players in that world, in my opinion, have been operating for months, if not years, with this expectation. Said another way, they know this is the outcome. They will draw money out of the assets they own through various mechanisms, and they'll be able to keep those funds under various government actions. There is a rather strange historical precedent for this. It's a little unusual, but I assure you it's true. I'm not joking when I say this. World War II in Europe could have ended in August of September of 1944. It didn't. It had to end, air quotes, in May of 1945. Why? Because the world's elites wanted to move wealth out of Germany, as well as from various locations globally that were under German control. So they needed the war to last at least 10 months, because they worked out how long it would take to move that wealth and those assets out of there. Another 10 agonizing months in Europe to enable that to occur. A key linchpin of both physical wealth, gold, platinum, etc., and currency was Switzerland, who in today's lexicon we would define as Davos specifically. If we look at moves by elites in the global economy prior to 1929, 1948, 1988, 2001, and 2008, and by the way, there's a lot more years I could rattle off, there were similar patterns of financial assets being moved or positioned to take advantage of what the world would look like when it was over. So with that, V or Algo.
No, great run-up, man. I think Cowboy's muted.
Okay,
Yeah.
no worries.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, a few things there. First of all, Matt Arrett reached out last night asking if we wanted him to do a show on how. I don't want to put the words in his mouth. You have to be so careful with like distinctions anymore. But basically, it was how the British Empire has been behind the U.S. deep state since 1776. So he might come on and do that soon. Certainly wants to, and that's relative to what we were talking about today. You mentioned Matt Ehret. The revelation of method and the occult. Yeah, that's all under something called the law of contract. The law of contract is that if you even like, they'll tell you in code how they're going to do stuff, right? This is why you see weird things on TV, like you'll see 9/11 all over weird stuff. Like somebody's, like Neo's driver's license, expired on 9/11, or things like that. All theoretically, in the world of Conspiratown, what they're doing is they're telling you what they're going to do before they do it, and therefore they can do it without incurring some kind of a karmic punishment later. And then that also occultish into the two pillars between which that shooter was standing. I believe, Veles, you must have been referring to Joachim and Boaz. Those are that's mercy and severity. So in the Freemasonry and in occult practice, the two pillars will be kind of a sort of a centerpiece, looked at as sort of a positive and negative of two poles, between which I don't know all the details, but mercy and severity are the two extremes. Interesting stuff there. Dinner with Andre. Now, I queued this up. I actually watched the entirety of my Dinner with Andre. Listen to it, because you don't really have to watch it. It's you guys talking for 2 hours. And everybody knows, like we've talked about it on here enough times. We've even played the clip where they're talking about how, New York is a prison that all the people built, and everybody, the inmates are also the guards. We've played that enough times. But what no one ever seems to play is the very sentence just before that whole thing starts. And I want to actually share that here. I'm going to have to unshare and then share with audio. Give me 1 second. Toggle. And I've got it pretty well queued up here. So fair use, everybody, right? And here we are. So as soon as this guy's done talking, the other guy is going to talk about a cigar shop for like 2 or 3 seconds or whatever, like one sentence or two. And then he goes into what I'm talking about. So off we go.
From a cigar store on 7th Avenue. But I mean... Well, I agree with you, Wally. But the problem is that people can't see the cigar store now. I mean, things don't affect people the way they used to. I mean, it may very well be that 10 years from now, people will pay $10,000 in cash to be castrated just in order to be affected by something.
Yeah, that is. And then the very next thing he talks about is what everybody else puts on the internet about it is, New York is a prison that we've all built and we're all proud of it.
Yes.
All that stuff. And that's worth watching. I don't know if I want to go through all that now, but right before he basically outlines people getting castrated just so they could feel something, and paying $10,000 to do it. That's, I don't know, probably certainly within an order of magnitude. Correct. Probably more accurate than that.
Order of magnitude correct.
I don't know what those things cost. They do it to cows for like $88. The Benner cycle, while you were talking, I looked it up, and while there may be different versions of it all that out there, every single version I saw, with the exception of one, had a top in 2026 and then a big fall. The exception to that was 2027. So, there you go. And then as far as crashing the schedule, and again, to remind everybody what that might mean is, pumping a bunch of money into a project pretty much just to spend the money. Well, or I would argue there might be even a different plan than that. But in this case, if they're pumping money into the system, what just happened with Ellison, Oracle, and it was NVIDIA and OpenAI. Like they wrote a contract that, okay, we're going to make all these chips for OpenAI. OpenAI is going to do a deal with NVIDIA. And like they inked the deal and it was worth like $300 billion. And then because of that $300 billion, they had the collateral to ink another deal between each other, which raised another few billion. And all this money, I think it was like close to $1 trillion all in all between all these companies and everybody else. And that's just what we know about. All appeared out of thin air before a single chip was made. We've covered that here on this channel numerous times. But understand that like if you're going to crash the schedule, you're going to need money to do so. And that might be why we saw these ridiculous deals that I think are tantamount to. I think Ellison should be in handcuffs and, quite frankly, sent to the stocks, and him and everybody like him. So, with that said, there might be a double-sided, reason for bringing up all that money, and it might be because they know that the crash is coming. And if there's going to be a liquidation, and nationalization is what it's going to be. When you bail things out, it's an effective nationalization. GM and what is now, well, part of Stellantis, GM and effectively Dodge, at the time. And V, you could speak to this more intelligently. They effectively were nationalized. They were given these massive loans, and at that point became under the control of people other than themselves, effectively. Who, I don't know what conglomerate of people, but the government certainly had a lot bigger of a say.
It did.
Yeah.
And it was sold off to FCA at that point. Fiat, which was, became Fiat Chrysler. Fiat is the organization that took them over from Mercedes. Daimler Chrysler, Mercedes owned Chrysler, and then it went over to Fiat. Sergio Marchionne was the CEO. He was also the head of the Fiat Auto Group, which owned at that time, Marchionne's FCA owned Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo, all the Dodge Chrysler products, Ram trucks, Jeep. I mean, it was a big conglomerate. And they did fairly well. And then at some point, they sold it off to Stellantis, which is just basically a Looney Tunes group of idiots and bean counters who hate cars, and ran the damn organization into the ground. But that's where we are right now, and they're trying to fix things at this point.
Well, and that also reminds me of what you just described about Stellantis. V is to me is a direct correlation to the late 1980s when, as usual, after everything hit the wall, people started asking questions and saying, well, wait a minute, what was KKR and all these other firms doing with, because the folks in those years, they were buying out like ship manufacturers, which if you're familiar with current time, you might understand why we're having a problem building ships. But anyway, ship manufacturers, steel mills, big, something near and dear to V and Algo's hearts, physical asset manufacturing people making stuff you can hold in your hand, or at least put your hand on it. Yep. And they bought up those companies and they chopped them up and sold off the assets, the individual assets. And in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, it was China, Korea, a couple other countries, literally picked up lock, stock, and barrel, those same steel mill components or what have you, shipped them to their countries and rebuilt them there, threw some computers on them, and were rolling out products a lot more cost effectively than we were. But to oversimplify, they hollowed out industries. They just made it an accounting function of it's worth 10 million today, but if I chop it up into pieces, it's worth 15 million. And it's, this is where we start leaning a little to the left, and with good reason, to say, well, wait a minute, how many human lives did you impact? Well, you got to look at the bigger picture, which is your wallet. Well, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's when Stellantis took over Chrysler, it was how much more value can we get for chopping up, cutting cost. I've shared on this. I know there's some YouTube videos that came out the last day or two by some folks who tend to comment a lot on the auto industry, and they've all been pointing to Ford and saying how many recalls and warranty work.
Oh my God, it's a nightmare, man. Like 2 million right now? Or 10 million? It's like insane.
It is, but let's remember our history, folks. It didn't start with Ford. It started with Jeep. I've raised on these shows a couple of times. Jeep was spending more money on fixing warrantable repaired vehicles than they were making by selling them.
Right.
And it's like, how do you, this is many a classroom I've been in where, especially my graduate program, where people who own businesses will look at a professor and ask, how does that make any sense? And you either get a professor who doesn't want to go there and changes the topic, or you get a professor like the ones I had that just plop down on their desk, throw their marker off to the side from the whiteboard and go, well, you see, what you do is, well, that sounds illegal. Well, it would be, but you see, the SEC doesn't do its job, so that's why that's happening. Now, I know some of you have put into the comments section, geez, Veles, that was uplifting. Look, I'm not here to rain on everybody's parade or, take away the sunshine in your day. But at the same time, if I could have told you a year or two, at least at a high level, not all the details, what was going down in 88 a year or two before it happened, or a year or two before 01 or 08, just to name three economic cycles, you probably would have wanted to have known. At least you could take some steps, that's straight up Mike Moore kind of thinking. You could then take some steps appropriately for yourselves or cut back on certain expenses you thought you might be doing. One of the things Mike Moore's been going off on a lot lately is he knows a lot of folks, because he and I are about the same age. And he's got buddies of his who are like, hey, I'm thinking of buying a house for my kids, or I'm thinking of doing this or whatever. And, Moore is like, coming through his microphone going, I keep telling all these people, not right now. Don't buy a house right now. I mean, I hate to be a Rothschild, but it's like, wait until the whole thing collapses. Then go buy a house. Hell, you'll be able to buy two of them for the price of the one. And yeah, John Michael Karma, the 6.2 engines, boy, don't even get me started with that with GM.
Oh, dude. Not only that, let's not forget Toyota with that 3.4 liter twin turbo V6 that's blowing motors left and right.
And again, they put in the new Land Rover.
What?
I mean, Land Rover. What do you call it? Land Cruiser.
Land Cruiser. Yeah, the Land. No, it's the Tundra, the Sequoia, and the Lexus GX 470 is running that 3.4 liter.
I think they put the four banger. I think they put a four banger in the
new Tundra. Correct, four banger
Land Cruiser
twin turbo.
Well, and as a bunch of car guys on this show, folks. I assure you, behind closed doors and in the text messages between me, V, and Algo, to have lived long enough to see Toyota of all auto, even though Toyota is the biggest automaker in the world and has a lot of brand loyalty and similar, hey, they're a prime target for M&A and KKR. But anyway, to see Toyota reach a point where, I remember Toyota's 22R engines back in the 70s and the 80s. I've got friends in the Southwest where you don't have to deal with the salt we have here in the Midwest. And, they're keeping vehicles running because the first question is, well, we can go to a salvage yard and get a few quarter panels for whatever's broken on the truck. But what motor do you have in it? Well, it's a 22R. Well, hell. Just pull the engine, man, and rebuild it. It's like a Volkswagen Beetle air-cooled engine. That sucker will just run for the rest of your life. Like, the car will be gone, but the motor's just going to be sitting there running. And it's to see Toyota reach the point now. And again, I don't want to oversimplify, but a lot of these problems, folks, a lot of them, beyond just the bad engineering and the cut corners, it's the damn motor oil.
It is the 0W20. They're using these very thin weights that are just destroying rod bearings left and right.
And they did it.
Motors, man.
They did it because they were trying to thin out the oil enough to get better mileage out of them. I got a family member who owns one of the, to quote from Mad Max, last of the V8 Interceptors. He owns one of the last 1500 series 3-liter diesels. And, he's been on a number of chat boards with owners of that vehicle. And the net of it is a bunch of guys kept telling him, you got to use a slightly thicker oil. Well, why? And they're like, well, you see, when Chrysler got that engine out of Italy, that 3-liter diesel, which also, by the way, is in, if you can find them, is in Jeep Wranglers. It's in the Jeep Cherokees. It's in a number of different platforms.
Even in Escalades.
Yes. That engine, folks, was actually a naval marine engine.
Oh,
it was not designed to be a road engine. And that, if you do anything on water and you're dealing with the torque of propellers in water, that's a very different design aspect in an engine. And you therefore need a slightly thicker oil because you're going to deal with more heat and stress on the engine than you would just motoring down a nice flat road. So as soon as he put in the different oil, it ran better and he didn't have the engine codes and stuff. But this is such a widespread problem out there. And yeah, and I hate to say it because I grew up in a General Motors town. These days, if you're buying a truck and you need a V8, I would just get a diesel.
Yeah,
just get a Duramax. Duramax is still a solid platform.
Yeah, Duramax is a solid one. Their 3-liter straight 6 that GM's putting out is the only motor that doesn't have the problem. That of the 5.7 seems to be okay, but the 5.7 is running that stupid 10-speed, which both
Yes.
Ford and GM co-developed, and now both of those companies are dealing with problems with that 10-speed transmission. It's hilarious. It's like right now it seems like Ram is the only truck without much problems because they're running the straight six overbuilt Hurricane straight sixes, which seem to be so far so good, but they're running the bulletproof German ZF 8-speed, which are a monster transmission that can handle so much power.
And to Gilbert Nowak's comments about that 6.2 liter engine that GM's got. Yeah, I've seen a number of the interviews with people where literally they take it to the dealership. The engine has absolutely blown up.
Yeah.
They drop in a new motor. The person makes it less than 100 miles, and they're calling the dealership again to say, send another tow truck. It blew up again. Also, it may have been Wanasong, one of you out there, made a comment about July 4th this year is the 250th anniversary of the United States. Obviously, very symbolic. We may want to keep our eyes on that. And then Wanasong, Unimog. Yeah, you can't go wrong with a Unimog. I don't know how you're going to park it, but it'll do the job. Yeah, to V's point about the transmissions, and I hate to say it, like where I live, I know a number of folks have been asking me, hey, I was thinking of picking up XYZ car. And they've got the money to do it. So they're like, well, I was thinking of going with BMW or Mercedes. And recently I drove with a friend of mine, Range Rover, the Audi Sport Ute, and the Jaguar Sport Ute, and the X5 BMW. And every single vehicle I just named, except for the BMW, is dog shit. Absolute, unequivocal dog shit. I don't know how Range Rover, and I already know the answer. I don't know how the Range Rover 4x4, both of them, the little one and the big one.
Oh, okay. Is the V8 or the 6 they had?
It was a 6.
Oh yeah.
But I'm just talking about the fit and finish in the interior. I'm talking about the door handles. I'm talking about little tiny vent.
What year?
This year, 2026, late 2025. And
not Land Rover, right?
No, yeah, Land Rover.
Or Land Rover or Range Rover?
Both. The little one and then the big Land Rover model. Now, is the suspension going to be solid? Does it still have the skid plates, et cetera, et cetera? Probably. But it's like if the interior is not going to make it, what are the odds the rest of the vehicle's going to make it? You get in the BMW X5, and it's like, okay, this was engineered by people who know what the hell they're doing.
The reason why I asked, if you get like the big boy range, right, the extended one, like the SV, they're using the BMW M5 motor. It's the S68 is what they're using, and they're running the ZF 8-speed.
Yeah, but if we're going in that direction, you know what I'm going to tell you, which is, hell, if you're going to do that, then just buy the Ineos, for God's sakes.
Oh God, the B58.
Back to the motor oil question. So if I take my 2018 Tacoma in, right, to get it serviced, which is going to happen soon, are they going to still use the 10W like 30 that they've been using or whatever it is they use, or are they going to switch to this new shit oil?
You'd have to ask the dealership.
No, it's going to be engine spec to whatever your V6
right.
is. That V6 on your Taco is absolutely bulletproof.
Oh yeah, dude.
You ain't got to worry about that.
That car's going to outlast me.
If folks want a bulletproof car, get an old Taco like the 2024 on down Tacoma, 4Runners, the old Land Cruisers, the 300 series, which we used to sell over here, the V8s. That's the million-mile V8s. Those older Tundras with the V8s, bulletproof. Those are million-mile motors. Amazing.
It was like 2013 era.
Yeah, the V8 on the Land Cruiser ran from, I believe, 2008 all the way to 2023. I believe.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, it's an incredible the incredible engine. They either way they fill the blocks in Japan, they fill them from the bottom, so there's no porosity within the block itself. Just an amazing motor. It'll run forever. You find yourself an old Land Cruiser, man, you are good to go.
Would you take that over the Armada?
Well, the new Armada is pretty slick, guys. I mean, it's based off. It's finally based off the Nissan Patrol, which globally is a rival to the Toyota Land Cruiser. That's number one. Number two, the current Patrol, which is the 25 Armadas, not the 2024s, but the 2025s, are based on the Patrol platform, and that motor is the VR Series VR35, which is, if you know anything about cars, that is a detuned Nissan GTR engine. And if you know anything about GTRs, my God, that you can you let's just put it this way: when you're building out performance cars, and you want to take it and run quarter mile and one half mile races, GTRs are the kings. They own the track. They own it. It ain't going to be your Hellcats. It ain't going to be your Mustangs, your Camaros. GTRs, and then you have the V10s, which will be your Huracan V10s and your Audi R8 V10s, as well as even the Vipers. The Vipers, a lot of guys are getting hold of the Vipers and started building up. But anyway, the Armada 2025 is built in Japan. It's not made in the U.S., unlike the previous ones. This is built in Japan. The panel tolerances, you can take a little measuring device. Every panel on that car is 3 millimeters or less, which is incredible. Okay, so the build quality is through the roof. It's got actual serious off-road chops. This is the Pro 4X version with actual off-road capability, and that engine is the detuned GTR motor, and then the transmission is also a very solid 9-speed, which is based off the Mercedes AMG unit. So you can't go wrong with that, folks.
Wait, I got one for you, V and Veles. You guys will love this one. Hold on. Check the screen.
By the way, folks, you've joined Coffee and Cars Hour with Rogue News.
Yeah. We're a group of definite car guys. I thought I'd put up the Skyline here.
Wrong GTR.
No, this is an old one.
I'm giving you right now. If you want one of these, like anywhere between $200,000 to $400,000, depending.
Yeah, he's also standing on the wrong side of the car.
Yeah, he is.
Oh yeah, this is JP Weigel. How about this? Wait, hold on. Oh shit, that's the Unimog. I had the Unimog up earlier.
I saw that.
There we go.
There you go. Nismo. That's a Nismo spec. Those are like going for 300 and climbing right now because they discontinued GTR production in 2024 is the last year. So these cars are going through the roof in price. They're bulletproof, man. I've had one. Those things are absolute monsters. Mine was cranked to 1400 wheel. It ran 8.6 all day, every day. Doesn't matter. 8.6 quarter mile. Monster. It don't matter what you got. Go get a Bugatti. Go get a Koenigsegg, a Pagani, whatever. You get a GTR that's built, it'll kill everything. It will kill everything.
I heard you don't really like not a lot of response, like not responsiveness is the wrong word, but what do you call it? Like feedback through the steering wheel.
There's a lot of feedback. It's different. It's not going to be like a Porsche, because in the world of electronic power steering, I think the best steering right now, it's McLaren, Porsche, and Alfa Romeo. That's the best steering right now. It's just the way it is, man. With the way things are in the industry with fuel economy and all this other stuff. It's surprising that McLaren still makes a hydraulic rack, which is incredible, instead of electronic power steering. So yeah, man.
Fun stuff.
God, I should just venture off and start my own auto channel.
Seriously, dude.
God,
we can do that.
Yeah, not to be indelicate. I mean, Click and Clack, the Tackett brothers, one of the brothers passed away. So man, we definitely need somebody to fill in that gap. One of their best shows I ever heard, because they always had the Puzzler, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with. It was like public radio, Saturday mornings. It was perfect if you were indeed at a car, like one of those morning coffee and car things, or just driving yourself around town. They always had the Puzzler, which was like these really weird questions, not insane, but weird automotive questions, and they'd ask you like, well, what was happening or what have you, and they tell you the following week. One of my favorites was a guy where the transmission had been replaced. They're there, and a whole bunch of different things were done, because every time his big Ford truck was pulling something uphill, he'd lose his brakes, and they replaced the master cylinder. They checked the lines. They couldn't for the life of them figure out what was wrong, because the brakes kept going out anytime he was going up a very steep hill, and he'd have to come to the top of the hill and then kind of slowly go down. But if he was driving normally, there was no problem. Well, it turned out what the problem is there was a small slit in the exhaust pipe. And so when he was going uphill, the exhaust gases became even hotter than normal, and they were aimed right at one of the brake lines. So it was heating up the brake fluid. Wow. And this is after thousands, like the manufacturer was like, we'll reimburse you. Like, we're so sorry. But it was like the most puzzler of all puzzlers. Is like, why is this guy's truck having these problems?
Yeah, I don't know. I've listened to these guys. I don't know how I came across them. It was long. I mean, it might have been you told me about them. So I want to say this is a long time ago, but I really like their work. It's fun to listen.
Well,
to.
I always loved it whenever somebody would call in and they would have a brand of car and whatever it was or a model. And I hate to say it, ladies, it was usually a woman. And they would just start laughing. And these women would get like upset, like, I haven't even told you what the problem is. And they're like, yeah, you have. You're driving a Peugeot.
You're driving a Peugeot. That's it.
Which I took personally because I still have a V, and Algo know this. I've got a real soft spot in my heart for the very late 80s, early 90s Peugeot 505 STI. It was just very much a product of that era. But those wacky headlights, the wheels, the way the interior of the car was laid out, I just absolutely loved those. And then I still remember the Car and Driver advertisement when I was in high school in study hall. And they had an ad that said, after driving the BMW 528e, you may have to, after driving the Peugeot 505 STI, you may have to drive a BMW 528e to go calm down. Because it was a model of car that had the first twin strut on each wheel. So the handling was unbelievable. It was like a lot of things in the automotive world. It was way over engineered. But it absolutely was. Oh, Columbo's Peugeot. Oh my God, Gilbert. Not only that, Columbo from the TV show, the Peugeot he was driving was like a 1960s model, so it had a side shift next to the steering wheel.
Yeah, he would want to come back and say, "I just one more thing," but the problem is
just one more question.
Yeah, one more question, but his car broke down 2 miles down. He had to walk the whole 4 blocks.
Yeah, LA before it went south.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's been fun, guys.
It's funny. It's like everybody that went EV is in a lot of trouble. Porsche went EV. They lost 99% of their profits. Did you hear about this, guys?
Yeah.
They fired their CEO and everything. It's like, it's unbelievable.
What did you tell us in the chat a couple days ago?
Yeah, the three of us were exchanging a text about it was Ford, I think, had a massive multi-billion-dollar write-down.
Oh yeah, 19.2 billion or something like that. $20 billion write-down
because of their they've got to extract themselves now out of, they got to retool the plants and everything to go back to either completely normal, fuel running engines or at maybe a minimum some hybrids, but not pure EVs.
No, exactly. They can't do it.
Susie, I don't use an oil additive per se. I have a fuel additive I often recommend, which is it counteracts the effects of alcohol. It's a Lucas product. It's you put it in your fuel before you fill up. It's green in color. You can't miss it. Some car parts stores carry it, some don't. But I know a number of listeners have tried it and said, yeah, that was a night and day difference. For any of you on the east or west coast, your fuel is 10, 15% methanol or ethanol. The manufacturers never intended that. And you need to put that stuff in there because otherwise it's just robbing horsepower and it's damaging your engine.
Destroying your fuel lines, destroying your motor.
I put it in after I fill up just because I keep it at home. I mean, it's going to mix around in there anyway, right?
If you drive over some bumps.
Okay, well, yeah, I live
where you live. You've got bumps.
We get bumps, and then you also told us, and I've been doing it religiously. Well, almost religiously. I put the heat HEET in there about once a season.
Yeah,
once a quarter.
And again, that's just another one, folks, that helps counteract the alcohol in our fuels. Now, I mean, the good thing is unlike the 1970s or 80s, we don't have to worry about water in our fuel, which was a major problem, and we don't have the massive amounts of sulfur we used to have in our fuel. Yep. But as the old saying goes, when you fix one problem, you may find you've got another one. And the problem these days is, not to be indelicate, and we've covered it many, many, many times, so I apologize for covering it yet again, but especially in California, but in other U.S. states, you've got a lot of folks that are putting more and more alcohol in the fuel through mandate, or what in the trucking industry they call an extender, which is where you like say, hey, 90% diesel and it's 10% biomass or whatever, which in a diesel engine is a good thing. But the reason why they're putting all that alcohol in is quite simply it raises the octane level on bad gas.
Yeah, we out here we have ethanol free stations. So if you're not buying an ethanol free station, it's hard to know what you're buying.
Sure was nice of her to fly in that thing on its maiden flight.
Yeah, they're launching flying cars in China.
Oh yeah, no, they've got them for sale. You can buy them. They're like 120,000. They got about a 20-mile range, I think.
Not bad. If you want to,
yeah, you know, it's a good toy for rich people at this point. And you don't need an FAA license to fly it. It falls under like the whatever rules, you know.
You better have an FAA license, or you're going to be hitting a Cessna.
Yeah, no, you don't go that. It's for the one here in the allowed or allowable in this country. I don't think you go past a certain altitude.
Okay.
Like those guys you see, I saw a few of them. We had like a few days with zero wind, and we had those guys out there with those parachute. Like it looks like one of those swamp fan. What do you call those Everglade?
Yeah, the airboats.
Yeah, they had some airboats. Like I think it's kind of meant to be at that altitude or lower. So I don't think there's any
like
FAA.
2 feet off the water.
No, it's not an airboat. What it looks like, looks like an airboat with the fan in the back, but it's like
you mean a hovercraft?
It's I don't know what it's called.
No, I know what he's talking about. He's talking, and I see him over my house occasionally. It's like basically a chair with a big fan on the back.
Yeah, and then it's a parachute that is your wing. It's like it's like an ultralight. I don't know if that's because when I think ultralight, I think of those little tiny helicopters. But this one is like I don't know how they get the forward velocity to create the lift on the parachute. I don't know how the hell they get it in the air, but the parachute is the wing, and the fan on the back of your chair provides the propulsion forward to make the wing, have lift.
Scares the hell out of me because I see some people flying around in those on like a windy day, and they're just like in one spot.
Yeah,
how about not enough for forward motion?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's like kind of one of my dreams to be able to do that. To have a little vehicle like that. So for me, like literally, it's one of the bucket list. I want that fucking thing. So once they get a little bit cheaper, or even not cheaper, but with more, more range, I'm definitely interested. I want to see a few people either die or not die first, like over a period of years.
You're a true consumer.
Yeah, like we'll let everybody else risk their life on their new toy.
I'm never a first adopter. I like to see whether or not people died first.
Or don't die. I was careful with that.
Well, that's a good thing.
Die or don't die.
You know what? Have you guys seen the new Toyota Prius?
Not something I watch on a regular basis.
Oh my god, it's gorgeous, man.
Oh really?
Dude, it's so nice.
It
actually looks good.
Let's see, because the other ones look like something I wouldn't be caught dead in. Let's see.
Toyota's coming back with a vengeance.
All right. I mean, some guys like fat chicks, and V likes this.
They're coming back with a vengeance.
Let's see. Hold on. I mean, it looks better, maybe than the prior models. Like,
it looks better than any dinky. What's it called? I'll show you. It looks better than any dinky Tesla, and it's a hybrid, which is great. And you'll probably go to the gas station once a month. Yeah, look at this.
I will say I drove my sister's Prius when I was visiting California. You never got to fill up. That's nice.
Yeah, look at this thing. It's gorgeous, bro.
Yeah, it's all right.
Dude, for a Prius, for a hybrid, you got to see it at the right angle. Look at that thing.
I don't know why they make these
gorgeous.
That's a good looking hybrid, no doubt. I mean, I don't know why they make hybrids so damn ugly though. Just make it look like another car.
Because they got to make it as aerodynamic as possible. It's almost like
that. Come on,
I swear to God. It's like the rule they had with the first diesel cars in the early 1980s. They all had skinny ass tires, and tried to make them as aerodynamic as possible so that you got your 50 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, let's see. It's not bad. It's for what it is.
I would buy this yellow one right here. Look at that yellow one. Look at that.
They're heavy,
so nice.
Right after you drop a GTR engine in it.
Oh shit.
You know what's crazy? Toyota has the Corolla GR, which is a 1.3 liter 3-cylinder cranking out 320 horsepower all-wheel drive with a manual. Where do I sign up for that one?
2020.
No.
Yeah, look at that.
No. I mean, are the pistons like 5 liters?
I have no. It's the whole package is 1.3 liters, turbocharged, 320 horsepower, 315 or 320 horsepower with a manual, and it's all-wheel drive.
Dude, I can't even
Corolla GR.
imagine how much abuse that little motor
I know,
is,
but they're
is
doing it.
taking.
But they're doing it.
Is this
When I-
it right here?
Yeah, there it is. The GR Corolla.
Yeah, that's a lot of car to push around.
Are those
for
even
small
legal in
motor.
the United States?
Yeah, they are.
Uh,
This was like a rally car in Europe, and they brought it over. The GR Yaris, the GR Corolla.
oh God, it won't make it past 50,000 miles, man.
Does it have it all like?
Dude, there are guys hitting 100,000 on this, man. Veles, come on, man. It's like turbocharged motors have gotten so much more reliable. It's not like
but dude, for a 3-cylinder engine at that small a liter, I'm getting flashbacks to the early 80s, folks, when Iacocca was putting these big turbos on like Dodge Omnis and stuff, and they were great, but this was the 10 years of listening to Car and Driver and Automobile Magazine bitch about the turbo lag. It's like, well, it's a tiny ass engine. It takes the turbo a while.
These things are response. Turbo lag is gone. They deal with heat a lot better. You don't have to shut it off and then wait for a while.
Well, and they've got twin scroll fans in them. I know,
exactly,
which helps with the lag. But God, you're asking so much of that little engine.
But you know what I would do? Like, you have an Integra, right?
Yeah,
I love the Type S.
Yeah,
of course you do.
Nice, dude.
The Integra
my insurance company begged me not to get the Type S. Folks, I have the A model of the Integra with red interior.
I love the Type S. The Type S.
I've got pimp color on the inside of my car.
Pimp color.
Veles pops out with the cane.
Oh man,
where all my women at?
Where's my business?
With a golden chalice.
Yo, hey, buddy, my insurance payment due tomorrow, bitch. Where's my money?
Oh my god. There's a lot of fun cars out right now. The Honda Civic Type R, Audi RS3s, phenomenal. A lot of fun cars.
All right, folks. Well, I don't know that. Heck, Christmas is next week. I was going to say I don't know if we're doing a show of any kind on the 26th of the 2nd. I'm not sure I will. I probably will see you all on the 9th of January. We're working on seeing if we can have Hobo drop in next week.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
That'll be good because he's got firsthand. And first of all, he's incredibly knowledgeable and he's very well spoken when he's on our programs. Very clear about his analysis on things, and he's living in Asia, so he's got on the ground intel on what the crap is going on in that part of the world. So,
yeah.
But this was the humorous portion of our show today to help you come over the content I had at the end of mine.
We got Matt Arid who confirmed Tuesday at 11 a.m. EST. V, are you going to be around?
I'll be here.
All right, I'll let him know that you should be able to make it.
No, I will be here, bro.
Okay, awesome. Well, then we'll do because Ben's going to be traveling.
Time.
He won't be doing his Tuesday slot.
Yeah.
And
Ben needs a rest.
Are we doing the show Monday or is that to be determined?
Well, that's the Hobo show if he makes it.
If we get Hobo on, yeah, we'll do a show Monday. We should be back on regular schedule.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, then I'll confirm with Eric. We'll do Tuesday. You and I will do Monday, pending any changes. And hey, man, awesome show, everybody, as always, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, gents.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Enjoy your weekends. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.